welcome to our week round of European politics. Well, an election is a big deal everywhere. Here in Ghana and Africa as a whole, it tends to attract a whole lot of international attention for varied reasons. But then, how much do you know about elections in Europe, which of course has implications for Africa in terms of foreign policy? Also, indeed, many of our family members are scattered all over Europe. So as Germany gears up for 8 elections in September, we're getting some information and analysis of the situation there. Thomas Sparrow is political correspondent for our partner DWTV. He joins us once again on our weekly round of politics and updates on Europe. Thomas, thank you very much for your time today. So as you all get ready, to vote, what is at stake here?
Well, there's a lot at stake when we talk about the September 24 elections in Germany. First, what the parliament will look like. Second, based on that, who will be Germany's next chancellor? And based on these two aspects, what the new government will look like. Germany, unlike other countries, like for example the United States, doesn't have a system where the winner takes it all, where the new president or the new leader simply elects who forms the new cabinet. Here in Germany, you have sometimes very lengthy coalition negotiations, and then coalitions are formed, and those coalitions are the ones that govern the country for the next 4 years. And in fact, in the past 4 years, we've had a so-called grand coalition between the two most traditional parties in Germany, the Conservatives of Angela Merkel and the Social Democrats, the SPD. So obviously on September 24th, it's an incredibly big day for Germany. After that, once we know what the parliament will look like, we will still have a lot to talk about. We will have the coalition negotiations.
Interesting. Now tell us a bit about the candidates and what their messages have been so far.
Well, we have in the parliament so far 4 political parties: the Conservative bloc, the Social Democrats, and then the opposition. And the opposition is the Left Party and the Green Party. But in the next parliament, you could have up to 6 parties. You could also have the Alternative for Germany, the far right, or you could have the Liberal FDP. So each one of these parties has a lead candidate, or in some cases also 2 lead candidates. If we talk about the biggest party, you obviously have Angela Merkel as the lead candidate of the CDU, and her main challenger from the Social Democrats is Martin Schulz. He's the former president of the European Parliament, and these two are really the strongest candidates, the 2 candidates that are looking forward to leading the next government. But that obviously will depend on what the parliament looks like after September 24. If we look at how things are now, what the polls say, Angela Merkel and her CDU, they have a considerable lead, a comfortable lead, and the Social Democrats, Martin Schulz, is trying to fight against that lead, trying to reduce the gap. And one of the areas in which he has tried to reduce that gap is by precisely focusing on an issue that is very important in Germany, but also an issue that is very important in Africa, and that is precisely migration.
Well, migration is something that we obviously can have this discussion without talking about. We'll get to that in a bit. But apart from migration, what else is driving the campaigns?
Well, migration is indeed the key topic. If you look at some of the latest polls, latest studies, around 44% of Germans say that that is the topic that has to be addressed most urgently. And when we're talking about migration, we're not just talking of the people who arrive, but also the integration, also how to make sure that people who are not allowed to stay can be deported, how to protect the borders. So it's a big range of issues. Other issues that Germans are particularly concerned about: social injustice, poverty, and also the pension system in the country. And if you look at international topics, those obviously play a very important role here in Germany. For example, the current tensions with Turkey, for example, the situation with the United States, for example, the current state of the European Union, where Germany plays a leading role. So we have a series of local issues, national issues, if you will, pensions, for example, but you have a series of international issues as well that are playing a very important role in the lead up to September 24 elections.
Terrorism, a bit of what's driving the campaign as well. Of course, it's been a very big issue everywhere.
Migration, yes, migration has been an absolutely key issue. I think that's what you're asking.
No, I'm asking about
It's probably
terrorism.
not as big an issue now as it was, let's say, a year ago. when we had the migration crisis in Germany, but it is still obviously an issue that many people have in the back of their minds, in particular because we're still seeing plenty of migrants arriving in European countries, migrants that could then potentially come, or at least try to come, to Germany. So obviously the main candidates, as part of their strategy to try and prevent many more migrants from coming to Germany, are also focusing very clearly on what should be done in the countries of origin, and many of the countries of origin in this particular case are located in Africa.
I was actually asking about whether or not terrorism, which has been a big issue globally, whether that has played any role in the campaign, in what's driving the campaigns in Germany as well.
Certainly. Terrorism has indeed played a role. In fact, you may remember in December we had that attack here at the Berlin Christmas market. Then exactly a year ago, you also had the first suicide attack in Germany. So obviously in the back of people's minds, there's the idea that Germany could be targeted at any moment. And obviously the political parties in the run-up to this campaign have obviously been focusing on security. Security is an absolutely key issue in the lead up to the campaign. And we're talking here about different types of attacks, different types of violence, but obviously when you look at Islamist violence, that's also a topic that is very much in the news, very much also in the political programs of the parties for the September 24 election. So yes, security in general and obviously terrorism in particular are very important issues, and they will also determine many of the policies that the parties can or cannot bring forward in the next parliament after the election happens and once the government is formed.
Interesting one there. But then how has the response been on the part of the German people? Do the messages and the things that are driving the campaigns resonate with the German people? What do they say to the messages they get?
Well, to a large extent, I would say the politicians are talking about the topics that many Germans are interested in: migration or security, or, as I just mentioned earlier, the pension topic. But it is also important to stress that there is a considerable group of Germans who believe that the traditional parties do not listen to them anymore, do not listen to their concerns, and that is one reason why, for example, the far-right Alternative for Germany is trying precisely to get into the German parliament for the first time, and why it has had considerable success, at least in relative terms, in some of the regional elections that we've seen in Germany. Their message is precisely based on that, based on the idea that many people feel that the traditional parties are not taking into consideration the main concerns that the people have in different parts of Germany. But I would say that overall the system is organized in such a way that the traditional parties in Germany can, at least to a certain extent, deal with the problems that people are interested in. And if you look at the party programs do certainly deal with the issues that I've mentioned just a second ago: migration, or the international topics, or pension scheme, or poverty, or social injustice.
Okay, well, it'll be very interesting how that pans out, but September is just about the corner, and we'll be able to identify who got their messages through to the people. Thomas, thank you very much once again for your time. Thomas Sparrow is political correspondent with our partner DW TV, bringing us, weekly of politics in Europe. Well, that's it. You're still watching The Pulse with me, Gift here, and I'll be right back.